Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mercy thought he had us tonight, and then we proved him wrong. So, I want to welcome you to our quarter year marine evening. And after this evening, we're going to take a bit of a break for winter, and then we'll start again in August. But I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight, for making the effort to come out. And it's my pleasure to introduce our specialized ranger on Dyer Island, Lwando Baleni. I'm going to do a quick introduction before he comes to the front. So Lwando is a passionate conservationist from Mossel Bay, and he's also our specialized ranger, Seabird Ranger, on Dyer Island, also working closely with CapeNature. So Lwando's journey began at the Cape Peninsula University for Technology, where he also volunteered at the city of Cape Town, gaining experience in law enforcement and research support. During his work-integrated learning year, he joined the Walker Bay Nature Reserve team, where he also developed field skills focusing on Cape vulture monitoring and also Cape zebra capturing. Lwando has worked in conservation across the Western Cape, from areas including De Wip all the way to our own Dyer Island, where he was involved in critical work when the avian flu outbreak happened on Dyer Island. We are very pleased to welcome Lwando to the team. He brings a fierce dedication to conservation, and we are very happy to introduce him tonight as part of the Dyer Island Conservation Trust team. Thank you, Lwando.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. As you mentioned, my name is Lwando Baleni. But before we get to things, there's just a short little video that we would like to play for you guys, just to give you guys sort of a view of the Dyer Island Nature Reserve complex. So that includes Dyer Island Nature Reserve itself, as well as Giza Rock and the surrounding areas. So please do join us in watching this video. Enjoy.
I see the button touch red, not green. That's fine.
Go.
Guys, we're trying to cut it.
Right. Thank you so much for your attention. Let's just start the presentation. Right. As Kari has mentioned earlier on, my name is Lwando Baleni, and I'm someone who's very passionate about conservation. And I've always tried to challenge myself and also try to make a difference in basically all the sectors or all the spheres that I've been allowed to partake in. So please do enjoy the slide that I'm going to present to you. It's just basically an overview of what we do on the island, because we get a lot of questions about, like, what are you guys doing on the island? What's happening with the penguins? And, you know, there's a lot of interest and inquisitivity around the island. So allow me just to sort of, you know, share a bit about our work that we're doing on the island. First of all, Dyer Island is a nature reserve that is approximately 20 hectares in size, and it is governed by CapeNature, which is the regulatory authority, and they are also our partners. So we basically work hand in hand in order to do our best to protect and conserve the biodiversity in that specific area. Secondly, it's an IBA area, important bird area, and that means that it's one of the 101 national bird sites around in South Africa, more importantly. So as I mentioned earlier, it's a provincial nature reserve as well. And also it is an international wetland of importance. So it's basically a Ramsar site. So it's been declared that in 2019 in March. So that's also important to the work that we are doing in and around that conservation area. So one of our main objectives is to conserve biodiversity. So that's basically all the range of different species, whether that is insects or aquatic amphibians or anything like that, all the way to our birds and our marine birds especially. So it's a protected area, and it's also one of our goals to protect South Africa's rare and threatened species. So as you guys know, the African penguin is critically endangered. So one of our main priorities on the island is to make sure that we do our utmost best to observe what is happening in that colony, observe what is happening in that ecosystem, and sort of use that as an indicator of sorts to see what's happening all around. So what I'm trying to express in that is, for example, food supply. That is a big indicator of what's happening around the marine life. So that's why we work on African penguins especially. An example would be sardines and anchovies. They prey on a specific type of, they forage on a specific type of fish, you understand? So the less there is of the sardines and the anchovy, that is an indication that there's an imbalance in the ecosystem, you understand? So basically, that is also one of our main priorities. And then rehabilitate and restore degraded ecosystems. So what that means basically is we're working on rehabilitating the injured and African penguins that are there, whether they are injured, whether they are oiled, whether there's been issues with their health, whether there's outbreaks, you know, diseases spread rapidly. There's a wide variety of threats that are there presently for the African penguin. So that's also one of our main priorities on the island, as well as promote the recovery of vulnerable and endangered species. Dyer Island is an important area it's a breeding site basically for a wide variety of seabirds. There's about 21 species that breed around the island, and just to name a few, it will be the African penguin, Cape cormorant, crowned cormorants, bank cormorants. We have white-breasted cormorants, swift terns, and Caspian terns. So that area is specifically dedicated to those breeding birds, and it's minimum access to people. So that's also a positive. You know, the minimum disturbance helps the birds so that they can thrive in their natural environment. So basically, I'm just going to show you a map. So just around, okay, so the purple patch over there would be the Caspian terns and the cormorants. So that would be Cape cormorants breeding over there. That's their specific area. That's more to the southwest side of the island. And then the middle patch, the red patch, would be the Cape cormorants specifically breeding in that area. And then we have the white-breasted cormorants and the Cape cormorants as well in the blue patches, as well as there in the green patches, we have crowned cormorants as well as Cape cormorants. So the birds are breeding successfully all around the island, and it's minimal disturbance, so they're able to thrive in that specific environment. So I've been asked this question quite a lot because people always wonder, why do we see you only once or twice a month? All we see is this guy coming to the restaurant and is submitting his food list. We just want to know what is it that you do on the island? There's so much mystery around the island. So these are my duties: ecological monitoring. So that would be basically anything related to wildlife. When we monitor birds, we go out into field, we monitor colonies, the different colonies of Cape cormorants, the different colonies of African penguins as well. Data collection, that would be basically the physical documentation of what's happening on the island. What are we seeing? What are the trends that we're picking up on, and so forth. And then data capturing is just basically getting all the field data that we've collected and being able to submit it on a spreadsheet and then submit it to our partners, CapeNature, because it's in accordance to their eco matrix. So they have a system and a structure in place, and then we just basically aid and assist one another in submitting that data and making sure that everything is calculated and everything is captured accurately. So daily patrols for enforcement and ecological reasons. So that's basically, enforcement would refer to any poaching activity that will be taking place on the island. And it's not just as simple as reporting that there is an incident and then you just basically lie on your back and then relax. We have a procedure in place. We have incident reports that we have to compile, and we basically have to give as accurate enough detail as we can, just to sort of justify or explain to the people on land what exactly is happening. So that can be the type of vessel that it is, if it's a rubber duck, or what type of vessel it is specifically, how do the motors look, and how many people can we spot on the vessel itself, as well as in which direction they're traveling. So all that information is very important, and it aids us and also the law enforcement officials to mitigate in that sense. So rescuing injured, oiled, and abandoned birds, basic stabilization of birds. So basically, if I do have an incident where I have a bird, ideally it would be best if I can sort of stabilize the bird on the island itself, so that we can sort of minimize the damage that it sort of has, or if possible, we can just sort the issue out as soon as we possibly can. So basic stabilization, whether I need to tube the bird itself, whether I need to apply some F10, some disinfectant, just basically do what I can to ensure that that bird stays alive with me as long as it can, so that if there's a necessity for it to come off the island, I can make those necessary provisions. And what I would do is I would hop on my kayak, and then I would put the birds inside the box, and I would start paddling to one of our whale boats. It's an interesting experience, to be honest, because it presents its own type of challenges and thrills, but I fully embrace that, to be honest. I've really, I'm so much, how can I say, so much more comfortable and assured. It's almost like when you have that sense of purpose and passion that's driving you, nothing can stop you. So I think that's one of my highlights for now, just being brave enough to actually take on that challenge and make a difference. As well as assisting with seabird counts, moult counts, chick conditioning, and assessing mortalities. So chick conditioning would be basically us taking a sample size of the nests on the island, and then we go to each individual nest. We have a look at the chicks, what's their sizes, how is their weight, and then we have a look at the measurements of the head. That gives us a general indication of how well the population is doing, you understand? So that data is assessed on a long-term basis, and as soon as we start to see chick sizes that are roughly P2, so that's penguins with the white plumage over here, and then they've got their down, that's when we start to implement the chick conditioning, because it's very important. It gives us an indication, rather, of what is happening inside the population. And then predation management, there's a predation management plan in place, and disaster management. So there's outbreaks. If there's an outbreak, we have a protocol in place. We have to use all the proper PPE, so that's personal protective equipment, making sure that we don't transfer diseases from bird to bird or from colonies to colonies, because these diseases are volatile, so we have to be very careful when we're dealing with them. We also have to equip ourselves with the necessary tools so that we don't end up catching anything or end up spreading anything as our stay on the island extends. As well as assisting with research projects and contractors, we also do general maintenance on the island. So basically fixing things. If there's no necessity for there to be a trip to come out, it's best for us just to fix the hinges on the door, or just have a look at the generator. What's wrong? Maybe we can get some plugs or something like that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to maximize production with our resources that we have. So that's very important. That's one of our messages we try to spread on basically in conservation as a whole. All right, so at the moment, we're just going to have a look at some figures here. The past 5 years of the breeding. So this is penguin breeding pairs on Dyer Island itself. So the breeding season starts around about January, mid-January to about October. So that is an important time on the island. They're very sensitive, so you have to be careful when you're approaching them, when you're interacting with them. You know, they're wild animals, so there has to be a certain level of respect when you're interacting with them. So there's about 19,800 mature adults, African penguins, according to BirdLife Studies. The sad thing is there's been a 90% decline over 3 generations. So we are in a bit of a situation, but there's a lot of effort and a lot of energy and a lot of time and resources that have been invested in doing our best to ensure that the African penguin colonies do well and they can at least be constant. You know, we don't want to see a decline on a regular basis. We're trying our best to intervene when we can, but to also let the colony, the different colonies sort of work their way, find their way, and find their balance in the ecosystem. So one of the challenges, or the threats rather, would be food shortages. So imagine an African penguin has to travel about 80 kilometers to get some food. So that means he's foraging for a long time in the day. He has to travel a lot further. So what that means basically is he's exhausting himself. He's exerting so much energy just to basically maintain, just maintain his own body weight. So that becomes a problem the further the distance. And then when the African penguins come back, there's not enough food to feed the chicks, or they don't have the energy to, the energy to basically incubate the eggs, you know what I mean? So that presents its own type of challenges. And there's instances on the island where we've noticed African penguins, they abandon their breeding efforts. You know, they basically can't manage the exhaustion and the exertion of getting food and foraging for food. And they also have a niche. They also have a specific type of food that they have to look for. So they have to travel a lot longer. And there's a lot of predators as well. And there's a lot of other species that are competing for that specific fish, the anchovies and the sardines, as well as commercial fishing companies. It's no secret that they haul lots of fish. They haul them actually by the ton. So that presents its own unique challenge. That's why us on Dyer Island, we have a 500-meter buffer zone. So we try our utmost best to make sure that everybody respects that area, that buffer zone around the island, because it's a feeding ground for the penguins. We don't want them to suffer and go too long and suffer over a long period of time, because that's bad for the ecosystem, and it's bad for their population numbers as well. So environmental fluctuations, there's a lot of factors environmentally. Global warming, climate change, that's a big thing for us as well. So it affects the African penguins as well. Oil spills and entanglement, fishing nets, people leave nets in the water. It's a huge problem. It's creating issues as well. And these oil ships, they have spills, and the penguins, they have no other way around, because that's also one of their feeding grounds. That's one of their main habitats. So they struggle a lot with that. And then also creating awareness, because there's always financial constraints. You have to understand that these things, they require effort and energy and resources. So we have to also create events like these and evenings like these where we can have the dialogue, and we can also sort of, create awareness. Like, it's a platform for everyone to share some ideas. What can we do? What can we improve on? And because I believe that all of us being here presently, that means we all share a common goal. We all have a passion, and we all have a reason why we attend events like these. We care about conservation. We wanna do something before it's too late. You understand? So that's one of the important things. All right, African penguin predation. As you all know, the Cape fur seals and the kelp gulls are one of the main predators. They're one of the main predatory species. As you might have noticed in the video as well, there are Cape fur seals that are right next to Dyer Island. So it becomes challenging, because the fur seals prefer, rather than going out and looking for fish, they would rather grab a penguin and just gut it, or just go for the abdomen area, and then there's fish, there's catch for him. He doesn't have to work as hard. He doesn't have to stress. He just goes and attacks the penguin. So that's one of our main problems that we've had. So these are just a few of our figures, and this is round about December, October, November, December, the December period. That's where we've had a peak, or a heightened amount of predation activities. As you notice as well, in That's February. So around about February side, when the penguins start to breed, when the penguins are under pressure to get more food and to actually go out and forage for fish for their offspring or their chicks, it becomes a problem. So one of the things that we always work on is our predation management plan, and it's constantly adapting to the challenges that we face. You understand? So we have to document any predation activities that we do witness, as well as increasing the patrols, being outside and physically seeing what is happening out there, because you can't see what's happening in the ecosystem if you just relax. You have to almost be proactive, take on the responsibility and take on the initiative. So yeah, during the breeding season, it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem, especially because of the demand that there is. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of demand to get food back home to the chicks. All right, so these are just some figures of Cape fur seal predations and Cape cormorant predations. As you can see, there's only a slight difference between the African penguin and the Cape cormorant predation. So that means that the seals they are causing a lot of stress and causing a lot of damage. And these are just figures from about 2024. There's a list of different figures, and there's a lot of different trends that we've picked up. But it's important to note that these things, they do take time, but it's also important that we do take initiative as soon as we possibly can, because these figures, if they continue this way, we're definitely going to be losing a lot more African penguins. And then these are just the predations of the Cape fur seals in 2024. This is more of a broader scale. You see, in October, November side, that's where we've had a bit of a spike. And then towards the beginning of this year, we've had the same sort of, 3 here, 3 penguins being spotted here, 3 penguins being spotted here. And this is only the incidents that we do spot. This is the only incidents that when we are actually physically out there, you understand? So there's a lot of other factors. There's a lot of predations that are happening out at sea, in the deep sea, while the penguins are foraging and going and traveling these far distances. So there's a trend that you can definitely pick up, that the Cape fur seals are predating on the African penguins. And it's important that us being the ones that are responsible, I believe that we are the custodians actually of that nature reserve. So we have to be proactive. We have to do everything in our power to stop this. All right. Thank you very much for your time and your patience. Thank you for listening. I'd like to open the floor for any questions. If there is anything that you may be interested in, maybe you can ask.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to mention, guys, because we're a full house tonight, please give me a second to get with the mic to you if you've got a question, so everyone can hear your question. Okay, all right, first hand I saw right there.
Okay, you say you've got problems with the Cape seal.
Yes.
Now, I've noticed in the last 6 years, going out fishing, that they multiply by thousands. So why don't they start culling these things when they won't have problems with it?
Interesting question.
They did it in Namibia, culling seals there, and the fishing started picking up.
Interesting question. Do you mind if I just speak? What do you need, Mike? Is that fine? Interesting question. So culling is an option. However, there are legal ramifications. There's procedures that we have to follow. There's permits that need to be sort of applied for. So that's one of our challenges at the moment, is getting the support from the regulatory authorities, whether it's the FFE, etc., etc. So that's one problem. It is a good suggestion. We could cull, but the thing is this: where do we stop? There's almost like a gray line, a gray area. When you do start a procedure like that, where do you stop? How far do you go? Do you wipe out all the bulls, or do you wipe out the females, etc., etc.? So it's an interesting question that you do pose. And yeah, I think if we can get like an overall support and everybody can be on the same page, and then we can get that, get that support, and then we can definitely implement that, yes. But it becomes challenging because of there's ethical things that we have to consider, etc., etc. So it's a catch-22 in a sense. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you for your presentation and for the work you're doing. It's excellent. I really enjoyed it. It's really nice. I noticed that your stats is across a very short time period. I mean, the numbers of the penguins you showed us there was from 2020 to 2025. So it's about, that one. It's about 5 years.
Yes.
And it seems to be, increasing a little bit on the left-hand side, and then it decreases.
Yeah.
Increased by about 20%.
More or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Numbers there. And you say there's a 90% decline in 3 generations, but, well, I think that is might be an overall thing. If that is true,
Yes.
then what is happening in Dyer Island is a very good buffer system that they have, that there is actually preservation of these species over there. So if you look at stats a little bit wider as far as time is concerned,
Yes.
you know in nature things are very cyclical and it can happen over generations and decades.
Absolutely.
Things
Yes.
going up and going down and going up. Is this not a sort of a natural cycle that we're seeing anyway? As far as penguins are concerned, if you look at stats in other years, and the same with the graphs that you showed us about the fur seals and the penguins, because it's very spiky
Yes.
and it's just one season. Is that a seasonal thing? Does it also happen every year through that in that season? I mean, in summertime.
All right. Interesting question.
It's easier to get to the nests. And so
I'd like to just hand the platform over to the chairman.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Lwando.
Thanks.
Let's start off with the penguin numbers. Lwando has only been here for a short while. We're very happy to have him here, but the government started taking, I think, doing serious counts since 1973. 1973, just to tell you about the cycles, in 1973 we had 23,000 breeding pairs of penguins. So there's no cycle. There's one cycle, and that is downwards. That is so with the penguins in Namibia, even worse than here, on the west coast, here, and in Port Elizabeth. The same with gannets. A massive decline on an island like Ichibu, where they counted millions of gannets. They formed a cloud in the 1800s, early 1900s. There's 200 and 300 breeding pairs. So, although probably fishing is the main cause, and in many instances overfishing in the wrong periods when the birds were breeding and so on. Here in Dyer Island, it's exactly the same. When I grew up, most of the quota was done by June, July in the Gansbaai area. And then many of the fisher folk went to Namibia and even the Cape Islands to work on the trawlers there. Nowadays, our most important breeding area for the cormorants and the penguins, September, October, November, the fishing trawlers is right into the bay, still catching fish. Government don't even begin to understand it. Many of the scientists don't even begin to look at it because they sit in an office very far away. We can only do what we can do, because we are probably the only commercial company doing what we do in South Africa that's doing this. That's why it's so important for us to have your ears and eyes and an amazing tourism, a lot of tourism people supporting us, because unless we do this, it won't be done. Seals is quite a different thing. The seals is a problem, and they're only a problem now because the numbers are so low. Natural predation happens everywhere, but if a species is so low that every bird counts, and with penguins every bird counts, then it can't handle the predation that the seals is doing. In 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, we had a brilliant young guy from Cape Town, Dr. Nui Makada, and he did his PhD on the effect of seals on seabirds and penguins. And I gave him hundreds of lifts between Cape Town and took him to the island and back and whatever. And his study showed that around 350 penguins per year were taken by seals. That is around the island. Until today, when this idiot is standing here, I could never convince the penguin mafia that this is an incredibly important factor to take into account. Up to 5-6 years ago, they didn't even listen to me. Then we got a permit to start taking out problem seals. Seals is wonderful. We just drove to Strathspey now to go and release a penguin, a seal with fishing line. And we help a lot of seals with fishing line and entanglements. But around Dyer, there's a specific system working. When the cormorants leave their nest, and we used to have 35, 40,000 breeding pairs of cormorants, nowadays 10, 12, 15,000, if we're really lucky. So that's as drastic as the penguins. But when they leave their nest, the first place that they go and sit is on the water around the island. Their first flight is just 100, 200, 300 meters around the island. That unfortunately happens end of November and December, when the young seal males get displaced from the island, from Geyser Rock. That's a different island. From Geyser Rock, and they go to Bachelor Rock, which is right next to Dyer Island. So we've got a few hundred young males sitting on Dyer Island. And then we have a few problem seals there, 7, 8, 9-year-old males. That is that's bird feeders, bird eaters. And then when they do that, and now the cormorants are sitting on the water, these young other males follow them and they learn that behavior. Because there's easy prey. Yeah, thousands of cormorants, because there's 15,000 breeding pairs, or 10,000 or 12,000 breeding pairs sitting on the island, these young birds, and they get ripped up to 300, 400 per day. And my friends sitting, unfortunately, in government offices, they're also sitting at universities, and it doesn't really bother them. Because there's not a study to be done, there's not money to be made, or nothing. I'm not negative, I'm not stupid. That is the fact. That is how it's happening. So now, when those cormorants is now fledged and they don't sit on the sea anymore, what happens now? Now we've got 50, 60, 80 problem seals. And what cannot fly into the island? The little penguins can't fly into the island. So the predation then just shoots up. It took us a very, very long time to convince the scientific community that the seals, once a problem seal, they don't have bad behavior at Dyer Island, and when they swim out into the sea, Good-hearted, yeah. Yes, and they don't take seals, or they don't take penguins or seabirds. So, when Dickie was a lot younger, 15 years ago, he walked from Hermanus to the Kelders. And they counted about 50 gannets that was ripped open. And he knew that was seals. So I immediately wrote a letter to government and say, here is your proof that these seals is also very bad now to see because they catch them where they can. And never believed. Took us year after year after year. The sad thing is that I am not well spoken and I have a temper and I get very excited. So if I go to these meetings and they sit with the talk show with the same agendas of the previous and previous and previous and previous years, I get very excited and then they don't ask me to join the meetings anymore. Or I tell them I'm not going to sit here and waste my time. There's nice movies playing. So if I was a better person, I might have been able to convince them sooner that we need to look after, that we have to cull the problem seals. I started doing it with a permit together with CapeNature a few years ago. But then I stopped because I don't like killing animals. Most of the animals that I've killed in my life is because I felt sorry for the animals. Problem, broken leg, broken. And I always say you feel sorry for yourself or you feel sorry for the animal. And when you feel sorry for the animal, you can help it to live this life. Now, when I started to get older, I started feeling sorry for myself. And I didn't want to kill them anymore. So I left it to CapeNature. And they were miserably not doing it. They didn't do it anymore. So I've asked a guy now if I can go and see him tomorrow. There's a retired professor in Somerset West who will help me with the study of probability to try and show once and for all that if the seals kill 300 penguins that we can see around the island per year, the probability you don't then count 300 times 10 and that is 3,000 seals over 10 years. Because these penguins, if they don't breed further, if they have chicks in the nest, if they have just made a friend and they made friends for life, then that stops immediately. So 2 chicks not being fledged a year, 2 chicks not being over the next 10 years, that's the study of probability. And so I think that if you look at that, you might find over a 20 or 30 year period your 15,000 penguins. Overfishing is still a very critical thing, but I do think that we have to look at this, and I'm really hoping that he can do this study for us, and that we can show that the seals is really a problem. Problem seals, not all seals. The seal numbers, when I started going to the island in 1998, 99, we had around 10,000 seal pups per year. Also seeing something happening now, and that is that over the last 5 years, the seal pup numbers has dropped drastically. What was the last count?
About 4,000.
About last year, this year now, we only had 4,000 pups. So 6,000 less. And the previous year it was 3,500, 2,000, 5,000. So going up and down, but not good at all. So it's not that we have just too many seals and too many seals and too many this. sadly, and a lot of you won't agree with me, there's too many of us. We are making an incredible impact on this incredible God-given planet of us, and we are just getting our pressure on more fish, more this, more that, and more that is just getting worse and worse. So I hope you understand a little bit more about the predation of the seals now, and then the numbers of the penguins. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that explanation. I'd like to open the platform if there are any more questions. Anybody has anything they want to ask?
I thought the government was then introducing a ban on fishing on an extended area around these places. Has that not happened?
To be honest, I don't know if they've implemented that yet.
Because there was talk about it.
Yes, that's the thing. It's talk. I haven't heard anything being implemented as of yet from the state, from the government. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Any more? Right. Go.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening.
The last gentleman mentioned the fishing. So I do know that there is a 10-year ban on pelagic fishing around Dyer Island. So I don't want to compare Dyer Island to Dyer Island, but they are very similar in nature. They do have seals, birds, and penguins. I personally have noted quite a lot of penguins around Dyer Island because I go there quite regularly fishing. Since I was a teenager, and when I was a teenager we didn't notice many penguins, but now we do. Their population at Dyer Island seems to have picked up. So at the moment there is a 10-year ban on trawling around Dyer Island for 25 kilometers. So
25, okay.
that's quite a big for that population there. So you mentioned earlier 500 meters from the island.
The buffer zone, yes.
That's nothing. So from a pelagic point of view, 5 kilometers maybe. I don't want to interfere with the Transvaal fishing.
I understand.
I'm involved in the trawlers here.
I understand.
I was a fisherman many years ago, and I come from a fishing family, so my heart is always with the fishermen. And then one more question. The roseate tern.
Yes.
How are they doing on the island?
They're doing well. They're doing well on the island, yes. We've had quite a lot of roseate terns on the island, so it's positive to see that. We've also had Caspian terns as well on the island, so it's good when it's breeding season for them that we see them around. But so we had Bruce Dyer, I think it was late last year. He did a count here. So so they're doing relatively well. Someone else have a question?
I wants to add with the permit condition, or what you asked about the trawling, and what you spoke about, Minister Dion's, the fishing ban around islands and 500 meters. It's very technical and complicated. Wilfred will give you a better idea if it's really working or not. But that's like a whole different conversation. There are so many loopholes that we're not sure that is actually going to
Take place.
So yes, I am flapping. So no, it's still a shit show, and we still have to do way more to protect the penguins. But if you've got any of those technical details, we can have that discussion maybe later.
Okay.
So I can't ask my question.
Here's the microphone.
I can ask my question.
Here we go.
My question
Excuse me?
is, please can you tell us what the actual fact is with regards to that court case? And Wilfred, what do you think? Are we going to be able to have enough fishing space around? Because it seems like there are lots of loopholes. I mean, I've just read the media reports and you can't believe the media. So
the court case,
such an important court case.
the court case is not going to happen. They had an agreement. So the minister was here a few days ago. They came to an agreement that they will not fish around certain islands, unfortunately, which is a good thing, we, Dyer Island Conservation Trust, bought 4 satellite transmitters for penguins, I think in 2010, 2011, and then CapeNature placed these transmitters on the penguins. And a few years ago, it was also done in the early 2000s by the UCT, but then they saw that these penguins had to go up to 64 kilometers at a time to do fishing. So instead of a 20-30 kilometer area, they had to swim a long way out. That also caused the amount of orphan chicks that we every year take off the island by October, November, and into December. When the penguins have to molt, that is mainly November.
Yes, indeed.
They have to go and fatten up, so they have to leave their chicks because their survival is more critical than the survival of the chicks. So they go out and they feed and fatten themselves up so that they can go back to the island and sit there for 6 weeks without feeding, and if they molt, they refeather. So every year now for the last 10 years, 8 years, we go to the island, and they know exactly where all the chicks is, and if they see that the chick is not underweight and so on, then we go and fetch those chicks. We feed them up until they're big and ready to go, and then we release them again. So the distance that the penguins need to swim to find their fish is very critical. So that is why the area around these islands is important to be protected. I think that it's sad that they had to go to court, or that they had to threaten fisheries, and the minister's got very little to do with it. He's got a lot of people in the DFFE offices that decide these things. And for the first time since Vali Musa, we have I think a very sensible and good Minister of Fisheries. Creasy, we wrote 500 letters, and we had to threaten her and go to the newspapers before we got her around the table. This minister we've had 3 times here already, and he's just 8 or 10 months into this job. So that shows that he really would like to engage. He's engaging with all the fishing communities. So the court case won't happen, and around certain areas they've closed it, and the fisherman is happy with that. They will fish on the outside. In another probably 4, 5, 6 years, we will be able to see if that's working or not. So that is something good for the penguins. Around the Dyer Island area, something different happened. Louis Groenewald, one of my fishing friends here in Gansbaai, he came to me and he said, "You must never send amateurs to reason with fishermen." And I said, "What are you saying?" And he said that they did a compromise, and they said that if they can exclude boats over 26 meters, only boats that's 26 meters, and the BirdLife guy said yes. But there's probably only 5 boats that's over 26 meters on the waterline that is now excluded from the greater Dyer Island area. So all the other trawlers can still trawl in there. So over the next few years, we're going to be very vigilant in our research on the nest and the birds' condition.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that answers your question.
Right. Right, is there anyone else that has a question maybe? All right. Right, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
For those of you who did not know,
Thank you.
other than Lwando on the stage, we had our CEO, Wilfred Chibble, and he's also the founder of the Dyer Island Conservation Trust. So thank you, Wilfred, for answering those questions. I think it really means a lot for a lot of us joining here tonight. And Lwando, thank you so much for sharing your experience on Dyer Island. He's been here for around 2 years now, and I think he's just growing in his role as specialized Seabird Ranger. So we are looking forward to a bright future with tonight. And once again, guys, your support means a lot, whether it's coming to evenings like these or going on our shark and whale tours or visiting the penguins at apps. Please continue to do so. We as a community can support the Dyer Island ecosystem, and we hope we can inspire you to continue doing that. Have a wonderful evening, and thanks again.